You've become an ancient artifact with a title we can no longer sustain." The sentence from Dr. Bradley Stanton's campus-wide email seared into my vision. My fingers shook as I reread the message, which had just landed in the inboxes of over 300 medical center employees. Given our current financial trajectory, I have come to the regrettable conclusion that we must streamline our administrative hierarchy. This change affects the position of Senior Medical Administrator, a role currently filled by Serafina Quinn. While we are grateful for her 19 years of dedication, Viridian Peak Medical Center requires new leadership to face the modern complexities of healthcare. Sarah is clinging to outdated methods, obstructs progress, and is the primary barrier to the essential updates we must make. I leaned back, reeling from the open disgrace. They hadn't even gotten my name right. I had never been Sarah a day in my life. The jab was thoroughly unprofessional, but Dr. Stanton was nothing if not that. My name is Serafina Quinn. I am 44 years old, and as of this morning, I was the Senior Medical Administrator at Viridian Peak Medical Center in Bellevue, Washington. I had committed my professional life to this place, climbing the ladder from an entry-level role. I had navigated fiscal cliffs, personnel shortages, and 3 major leadership shakeups. But this was something else entirely. A gentle rap sounded at my door. It was Cora, my assistant, her expression a mix of shock and sympathy. "Serafina, I am just so sorry. This is horrible. He's not allowed to just—" "He is," I cut in, drawing a steadying breath. As the Chief Executive Director, he holds the power to reshape the administration. I suspected a move like this was on the horizon after he ghosted our last 3 scheduled meetings. Dr. Stanton had shown up 6 months prior, armed with lofty promises and a glowing CV. He talked a big game about innovation and optimization, but demonstrated zero curiosity about the actual inner workings of our medical center. His first executive decision was to revoke complimentary parking for all staff. His second was to dial back nursing staff levels during the overnight shifts. "What are you going to do?" Cora asked, her voice trembling slightly. I glanced around my office, taking in the framed certifications, the snapshots of my family, and the neat line of binders on my credenza, each spine reading safety audits and infractions. Within those binders lay 19 years of carefully recorded safety red flags, staffing shortfalls, and procedural breaches. Some had been addressed. A great many had not. "I'll be okay," I said, a peculiar sense of calm washing over me. Being misjudged can sometimes be your greatest strength. I rose from my chair and began gathering my personal effects, deliberately leaving the binders behind. I possessed digital backups of every single page. When the security team arrived to walk me out, another of Stanton's demeaning ploys, I was prepared. I offered a small smile, clutched my box of personal belongings, and exited with my dignity intact. That night, I placed one phone call. It was to Eleonora Croft, a past board member who had stepped down the previous year. She had been a guiding force for me when I started at Viridian Peak, and had become a trusted confidant. "He did what?" Eleonora's voice crackled with fury as I recounted the email's contents. "That's textbook defamation, Serafina." "Perhaps," I conceded, pouring a glass of Cabernet while I sat in my dimly lit living room. "But I don't think that's the path I want to take." I laid out for Eleonora how Dr. Stanton had been methodically taking apart our safety frameworks over the past 6 months, how he dangerously lowered the nurse-to-patient ratios in both oncology and pediatrics, how he'd pushed surgical teams into shifts that went far beyond established safety limits, and how equipment service schedules had been dangerously delayed to save money. "The trouble is," I went on, "he's been slick about it. Every single adjustment is framed as a short-term measure, or rationalized by some industry buzzword he's applying incorrectly. The board is only seeing the reduced expenses, not the elevated dangers. And I'll bet you have a record of every last bit of it," Eleonora stated. It was not a question. Every single incident, every formal complaint, every near catastrophe, I started compiling these files my first year at Viridian Peak, 3 directors before Stanton tried to cut corners, and I always had the data to prove why it was a disastrous idea. What I kept to myself was just how deep this cut. My own mother had been a patient at Viridian Peak 20 years prior. A single missed dose of medication on an understaffed night shift resulted in complications that added weeks to her recovery. That very event had propelled me into a career in hospital administration, so I could be the one to ensure such errors were never repeated. I gave up everything for that medical center, I murmured. Friendships, the chance for a family, time off. I truly thought I was doing something important. You were, Eleonora affirmed, and you can be again. The real question is, what outcome do you want to see now? I took another sip of wine, weighing my choices. I could accept a severance deal and look for a new job. I could pursue a wrongful termination claim. I could take the early retirement Stanton was pushing me toward, or I could stay and fight. I want to safeguard the patients, I declared at last, and the staff who are being stretched to their absolute breaking point. But I have to play this very carefully. Good, Eleonora concurred. Stanton has the board's confidence for the moment, but that can evaporate once the right facts are brought into the open. My eyes fell on my laptop, and I thought of the files I had so diligently curated, years of concrete proof of safety violations, staffing crises, and policy disregards, hard evidence that couldn't be waved away as the grievances of a bitter ex-employee. Give me a couple of days, I said. I have to get my thoughts in order. And my proof. 3 days following my public ousting, I was at my dining table, encircled by stacks of printed emails, policy memos, and incident summaries. I had dedicated hours to arranging the most damning proof of safety lapses under Dr. Stanton's tenure. My phone lit up with a message from Sophia Reyes, the charge nurse for the night shift in the ER. You won't believe what we dealt with last night. 2 nurses called in sick, and management refused to find replacements. We were operating at unsafe capacity all shift. A patient presenting with chest pain was left waiting for 4 hours. Stanton's memo says this is our new operational standard, and we must learn to be more flexible. I filed this away with the rest. It was no longer just a collection of stories. The numbers revealed an undeniable trend. Formal incident reports were up by 37% since Stanton's arrival. Near misses, potential mistakes intercepted before they could cause harm, had risen by 42%. The rate of staff departure had doubled. My doorbell chimed, breaking my concentration. I opened it to see Cora holding a bag of takeout. I had a feeling you weren't feeding yourself, she said, breezing past me toward the kitchen. Also, I come bearing news. As she laid out cartons of pad thai, Cora updated me on the brewing storm at Viridian Peak. Stanton named your successor today. It's an old crony of his from Denver, Travis Delaney. 0 experience in healthcare management, but he's supposedly a genius of medical economics. I scoffed. In other words, he knows how to slash budgets without a thought for the consequences. Precisely, Cora confirmed. Oh, and a new staffing paradigm is being rolled out next week. Nurses will be assigned more patients, and they're slashing the hours for support personnel. Has anyone objected? I asked, though I could guess the answer. Beatrice in nursing tried. Stanton told her that if she was unable to manage the new demands, maybe she should seek opportunities better suited to her abilities. But Beatrice Hale had been Viridian Peak's director of nursing for 15 years. She was esteemed, capable, and fierce when it came to patient well-being. If Stanton was trying to force her out as well, things were far more dire than I had realized. What's your strategy? Cora inquired, reading my face. You've got that look you get when you're about to make a move. I paused. Cora was trustworthy, but roping her in could jeopardize her position. I'm weighing my options. I answered cautiously. The most straightforward path is to present the board with evidence of these dangerous practices, but Stanton has them sold on the idea that he's their financial savior. What about the State Health Commission? Cora offered. An anonymous report on safety failures would have to trigger an official review. I had weighed this option, but government inquiries were notoriously slow, giving Stanton ample time to hide his misdeeds. I needed a more direct approach. I think I need to tackle this from several directions at once, I said. The regulators, certainly, but also the medical professionals who are worried, the patients who are seeing the drop in care quality, and maybe even the press. Cora's eyebrows shot up. Taking the gloves off, then? Not quite yet, I answered, but I'm getting all my pieces in place. What I didn't voice was the sheer rage I felt. It wasn't just about my job. It was about the flagrant contempt for the safety principles I had dedicated my life to upholding. Stanton wasn't just sidelining me. He was tearing down years of effort dedicated to keeping people safe. I thought of the binders back in my old office, the mountain of proof I had gathered, and my resolve hardened. It was time to make a move. A week after my firing, I was in a dimly lit corner of a coffee shop, 3 blocks from Viridian Peak, staring into a coffee that was now cold. Seated across from me was Dr. Julian Rhodes, the head of surgery, a man with whom I had worked hand in hand for over 10 years. I really shouldn't be here, he said quietly, casting a nervous look around the cafe. Stanton made it very clear that anyone who stays in touch with you will be viewed as insubordinate to the new vision. And yet, you came, I noted. Julian let out a weary sigh, combing his fingers through his salt and pepper hair. What's going on is wrong, Serafina. Stanton is making calls that put patients in jeopardy, and no one seems to have the power to challenge him. Walk me through what's happened since I was let go, I prompted, taking out a small notepad. For the next half hour, Julian laid out a series of disturbing changes. Surgical staff were being pushed into double shifts, critical equipment servicing was being deferred, and medical supplies were being so strictly limited that some staff were buying their own. The most troubling change was a new accelerated patient discharge system that was more focused on emptying beds than on ensuring patients were fit to leave. We've had 3 readmissions in the last week alone because people were sent home prematurely, Julian stated with a grimace. One was an elderly woman who left without clear instructions for her medication. She was back in the ER within 12 hours, in much worse shape than when she'd been discharged. Are people logging these events? I asked. Julian nodded. We're attempting to, but Stanton has installed his own people in administrative roles, who either downplay the reports or claim the paperwork gets lost. Beatrice has been keeping her own private log, but she's on very thin ice as it is. I slid a small USB drive over the table. I need you to get this to Beatrice. It has templates for documenting unsafe situations in a way that will hold up under official review. Julian discreetly slipped the drive into his pocket. What's your play here, Serafina? I'm compiling a case for the State Health Commission, I confessed, but I need fresh documentation that shows the patterns I've been seeing are ongoing. You realize this could destroy careers, don't you? Yours, mine, Beatrice's? I held his gaze without flinching. What about the patients, the ones whose lives we are supposed to be safeguarding? How many more will be harmed because we were too scared to speak up? Julian looked down into his cup. You're right. It's just, he's a formidable opponent. He's got the board completely convinced. Financial turnarounds often have a hidden price, I reminded him. In this case, it's patient well-being. I'll do what I can, Julian resolved. But be warned, Stanton is better connected than you realize. His brother-in-law sits on the board of the State Hospital Association, and he has allies at the Capitol. That was a piece of the puzzle I didn't have, and it made everything more difficult. If Stanton had friends in the regulatory agencies, my complaint could be stonewalled or brushed aside. As we were about to leave, Julian touched my arm. "There's one more thing. Stanton has been telling everyone you were dismissed for gross incompetence, that you were cooking the books and faking staffing numbers. He's essentially pinning all the hospital's financial woes on you." The claim was like a punch to the gut. Not only was I disgraced and unemployed, but my professional standing, which I had spent 19 years carefully building, was being systematically dismantled. "Thank you for letting me know," I said, my voice barely steady. As I walked to my car, a cold fury washed over me, deeper than anything I had felt before. Stanton wasn't just putting patients at risk. He was assassinating my character, my entire professional life. The time for caution was over. When I got to my car, I made up my mind. I needed to bring in someone I had been reluctant to involve. Leo Kent, an investigative journalist for the Bellevue Chronicle, who specialized in healthcare reporting. He had contacted me a few years back for a piece on hospital management, and I had politely declined. I found his number in my phone and typed out a text. "We need to talk. I have information regarding significant patient safety risks at Viridian Peak Medical Center." His reply was almost instantaneous. "I've been waiting for a call like this. Name the time and place." Leo Kent was younger than I'd pictured, likely in his early 30s, with sharp, focused eyes, behind thin-framed spectacles. We chose a park bench far from the medical center, where I explained my deep concerns about Viridian Peak under Stanton's direction. "I've been hearing whispers," Leo conceded, recording our talk with my consent. "Staffing issues, a spike in departures, but it's all just talk, without a source on the inside to back it up." "I have more than whispers," I replied, passing him a manila folder. "These are redacted incident reports from the last 6 months. They illustrate a distinct pattern of rising safety issues that aligns perfectly with Stanton's policy rollouts." Leo examined the documents, his face growing more sober with every sheet he turned. "This is troubling, but Stanton's camp could dismiss these as unconnected events or blame them on broader challenges in the healthcare industry, which is why I also prepared these." I produced a second folder filled with statistical charts. These graphs demonstrate that while comparable medical centers in this area have held steady safety ratings, Viridian Peaks have plunged since Stanton came on board. Leo let out a low whistle. "You've certainly done your research." 18 years of it, I clarified. "I've tracked these metrics through several leadership teams. The key difference is that previous directors would listen when I showed them the data. Stanton just showed me the door. So why go to the media now? Why not approach the board directly?" It was a logical question, one I had wrestled with myself. The board brought Stanton in for the express purpose of cutting expenditures. They see the bottom line improving, but they don't grasp the safety compromises being made, and Stanton has successfully painted me as a disgruntled, incompetent employee. Leo nodded slowly. "So you need public outcry to force them to listen." "Exactly. The moment patients and the wider community realize what is truly happening, the board will be forced to respond, no matter who Stanton knows." "This is a very strong story," Leo commented, "but you need to be aware of what you're stepping into. Stanton will not let this go unanswered. He will come after your credibility, your character. He's already doing that," I noted, "at least this way. The public gets to hear the truth." As Leo gathered the documents, assuring me he would begin independent verification, a flicker of self-doubt hit me. Was I doing this for the right reasons? Was this truly about patient safety? Or was it a reaction to my own bruised ego? The clarity I needed came when Leo posed one last question. "What is the best possible outcome you see from all of this?" Without a moment's pause, I answered, "That Viridian Peak goes back to making safe, high-quality patient care its top priority. Whether I am a part of that future is not the most important thing." That evening, A call came from Eleonora, and it was unexpected. "Stanton is making preemptive strikes," she said, skipping any pleasantries. "He's been ringing up board members one by one, telling them you're about to hit the medical center with a wrongful termination lawsuit. He's claiming you are manufacturing these safety issues to build a stronger case for yourself." A cold knot formed in my stomach. That's a complete lie. I have no intention of suing. I'm aware of that. But they are not. He's tainting the jury pool before you even get a chance to plead your case. This was a chess move I hadn't seen coming. Stanton was far more cunning than I had given him credit for. "There's more," Eleonora added. "He's accelerating his savings initiatives. He's pushing them all through at once, instead of in stages. It's as if he senses a confrontation is imminent, and he's trying to lock in as many of his changes as he can. This meant he knew I was building a case. Maybe my meeting with Leo had been reported back to him, or perhaps Julian's chat with Beatrice had been overheard. "What do I do?" I asked, suddenly feeling like I was in over my head. "Hold your ground," Eleonora said firmly, "but brace yourself for a storm. Stanton is the kind of man whose career is built on never admitting fault, never backing down." After we ended the call, I sat in my living room, my gaze fixed on the evidence I had taped to the wall. My original plan had been to move deliberately, to construct an ironclad case before I revealed my hand, but Stanton was fast-tracking his agenda, which meant I had to fast-track mine. I sent a text to Leo. "How soon can you publish the story?" The headline hit the web 3 days later. "Patient Safety Crisis. Looms over Viridian Peak Medical Center." Leo had moved with incredible speed, corroborating my information with other staff members and cross-referencing Viridian Peak's safety data with statewide benchmarks. The piece did not identify me as the main source, but it did reference recently dismissed administrative personnel who had flagged these concerns. My phone immediately started to buzz. The first call was from Beatrice, the nursing director. "It's pure chaos here," she said. "Stanton has called an urgent meeting of all department heads. He's livid, trying to find out who leaked this to the media." "Did he say anything about the safety issues themselves?" I asked. "Not a word. His only concern is damage control and finding the betrayers. He's already threatened to fire anyone caught communicating with the press." The next call was from Julian, who had a more balanced perspective. "The medical staff is privately celebrating. Someone finally put into words what we have all been thinking. The board is in an emergency meeting as we speak." The most startling call, however, came from Leo himself. "You need to get to Channel 8 News right now." I switched on the TV to see Dr. Stanton at a lectern, flanked by somber-looking administrators. His face was a mask of sincerity as he spoke to the reporters. "The claims made in this morning's chronicle are utterly and completely baseless," he declared with conviction. "Viridian Peak Medical Center adheres to the most rigorous standards of patient care. These trumped-up allegations seem to be the work of a disgruntled former employee who was let go for gross incompetence and is now waging a personal vendetta against this vital community institution," he continued, describing me without using my name in a way that left no doubt, as bitter, resistant to progress, and malicious enough to smear the medical center's good name for personal revenge. "We have brought on legal counsel," Stanton concluded, "and we will be weighing all our options concerning this libelous article." I hit the mute button, my pulse hammering. He was smearing me on live television, calling my integrity and work ethic into question. "You've got him on the ropes," Leo said through the phone, "but this is only round 1. "What comes now?" I asked. "Now is when it gets good. The State Health Commission reached out to me right after the story went live. They want to see every piece of documentation you have." This was a much faster response than I had ever dared to hope for. Regulatory agencies usually operated at a snail's pace, but the high-profile nature of the story must have lit a fire under them. I have digital copies of everything, ready to send, I told him. But what about his legal threats? Classic scare tactics. Leo waved off. The Chronicle's attorneys vetted every single sentence before we went to print. It's all factual and well documented. I was not so easily calmed. Stanton had deep pockets and powerful friends. While I had been painstaking in my record-keeping, I was all too aware of how the truth could be warped, how narratives could be spun to make a monster out of a whistleblower. Later that day, I got an anonymous message from a Viridian Peak email account. Look at the oncology patient readmission data for the past 2 months. You'll see a clear trend of premature discharges followed by severe complications. Stanton personally greenlit the new discharge guidelines over the strenuous objections of the oncology team. This was precisely the kind of detailed, provable data that could cement the case against him. I passed it along to Leo, who said he would dig into it immediately. By sundown, news trucks were camped out in front of Viridian Peak. The Regional Healthcare Employees Union had put out a press release backing the Chronicle's reporting and demanding a comprehensive audit of the medical center's safety procedures. Patient rights organizations were clamoring for answers. What had begun as my personal archive of wrongdoing had erupted into a full-blown public crisis. Watching the news reports, I felt a confusing swirl of vindication and dread. I had set out to protect patients and see Stanton held responsible, but I had never imagined how fast it would all blow up or how vicious the personal attacks would get. This was no longer just about my professional life. It was about the very soul of Viridian Peak Medical Center and the well-being of thousands of patients. And in spite of Stanton's aggressive counterattack, I knew I held one unbeatable advantage. I had the truth. 1 week after the Chronicle story was published, the State Health Commission officially announced a formal investigation into Viridian Peak Medical Center. A team of inspectors descended unannounced, combing through records, conducting interviews with staff, and observing daily procedures. Stanton was conspicuously absent during their 3-day audit, leaving a group of flustered administrators to field tough questions about staffing levels and safety measures. I followed the developments from afar, receiving updates from Beatrice and Julian. The investigation itself was a form of validation, evidence that my alarms were not unfounded. But I was certain Stanton would not surrender easily. On the 4th day, a surprise visitor appeared at my home. Marcus Cole, the chairman of the hospital board, was standing on my porch, looking decidedly ill at ease. "Mr. Cole," I greeted him, genuinely taken aback. "I wasn't expecting to hear from you. May I have a word?" he asked, casting a look over his shoulder, as if to ensure he wasn't being watched. I showed him into my living room, where the wall of evidence I had assembled was still on display. He studied it for a full minute before he spoke. "The board just received the initial report from the Health Commission," he said with a heavy sigh. "It's bad. Serious safety infractions. The threat of regulatory sanctions. Potentially massive fines." He paused. "They point specifically to directives issued under Dr. Stanton's authority." I held my silence, sensing he wasn't finished. "We have also turned up some financial discrepancies," he added. "Exorbitant consulting fees paid out to companies with ties to Stanton's relatives. Dubious contracts for equipment from suppliers, in which he has a financial stake. This was a bombshell I had not seen coming. My entire focus had been on patient safety, not financial misconduct. The board has scheduled an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning," Cole stated. "Stanton has been put on administrative leave while we conduct a full internal review." He looked at me squarely. "We would like you to be at that meeting, to help us chart a course forward." I had played out many possible scenarios in my head when this all began, but being asked to return was not one of them. I had accepted that my time at Viridian Peak was over, no matter the final outcome with Stanton. "Are you offering me my job back?" I asked for clarification. Cole nodded. "The board is admitting that we made a grave mistake, both in bringing Stanton on and in sanctioning your dismissal. Your intimate knowledge of this institution's workings is precisely what we require at this critical moment. The board meeting was fraught with tension. The members were clearly split on the best way to handle the crisis. Some, like Cole, openly admitted to the board's poor judgment concerning Stanton. Others remained on the defensive, implying that the issues had been blown out of proportion. Stanton himself was not present, but was represented by a lawyer who offered nebulous comments about clashing management styles and misinterpretations of new policies. When it was my time to speak, I presented not only the safety problems, but also my plan to fix them, re-establishing safe nurse-to-patient ratios, restarting routine equipment servicing, and creating a system of transparent checks and balances to prevent any future threats to patient care. These are not extreme measures, I stressed. They are the standard operating procedures that Viridian Peak adhered to for years before these recent changes. Yes, they come with a cost, but so do patient readmissions, medical complications, and regulatory penalties. The discussion raged on for hours, but when the meeting finally drew to a close, the board had come to a consensus on several key points. First, Dr. Stanton's contract was terminated, effective immediately. Second, I would be reinstated as senior medical administrator, with a newly expanded authority to oversee all safety and compliance matters. Third, an external auditor would be brought in to examine every policy change made in the last 6 months, with any that jeopardized patient care, to be reversed without delay. Just as the meeting was wrapping up, Leo Kent's follow-up story went live on the Chronicle's website. Health Commission confirms safety violations at Viridian Peak. Director fired. The piece detailed not only the safety failures, but also the financial malfeasance that had been uncovered by the investigation. Leaving the boardroom, I was overcome by a wave of complex feelings. There was the satisfaction of knowing patient safety would once again be paramount, and the relief of having my professional name cleared, but also a keen awareness of the broken trust and fractured relationships that would need to be mended. Beatrice was waiting for me in the corridor, a hesitant smile on her face. "Welcome home," she said, her voice full of meaning. "We have a mountain of work ahead of us," I responded. "Yes," she acknowledged, "but at least this time, we're going to do it the right way." In the following weeks, I spearheaded a complete overhaul of the systems at Viridian Peak. We brought staffing levels back to safe and appropriate numbers, restored critical safety measures, and created transparent channels for reporting any and all safety issues. The Health Commission's final report detailed 27 major violations that occurred under Stanton's command, leading to hefty fines, but also, more crucially, providing a clear path forward for improvement. Stanton, disgraced and facing potential legal trouble for his financial dealings, left Bellevue for good. I later learned he had taken a job with a private healthcare consulting firm in another part of the country, a troubling thought, but a situation that was now beyond my influence. As for myself, I felt a renewed and deeper sense of purpose in my work at Viridian Peak. The whole ordeal had been a stark reminder of why I had chosen a career in healthcare administration to begin with. It was never about titles or authority, but about making sure that every patient who came through our doors received the safe, high-quality care they had a right to expect. A year after my forced retirement and subsequent return, I was in the medical center's main lobby, unveiling a new patient safety program. As I looked out at the faces of the staff, many of whom had risked their own livelihoods to expose the dangerous conditions, I was filled with an overwhelming sense of gratitude. My years of careful record-keeping had supplied the evidence, but it was their bravery that had secured the victory. Together, we had turned a disaster in the making into a chance for renewal, demonstrating that sometimes the most powerful form of revenge isn't retribution, but reform.